One. Live.
I'd like to open the regular village board meeting for the village of Shorewood via a conference call on May the 12th in the year 2020. I will forego the pledge of flag. I just say God bless America. I know we all feel that way. And Diane, I ask for a roll call.
Mayor Chapman?
Here.
Dan Anderson?
Here.
Steve Blackman?
Here.
C.C. DeBold?
Here.
Barb Kirkland? Here. Tony Luciano?
Here.
And Dan Warren?
Here. Okay, let the record state that there's a quorum for regular village business can be done tonight. I'd like to move on now to any citizens. Are there any citizens there that would like to speak to the village board tonight? We'll give everybody a couple of minutes for at least a minute here. See if you want to come in.
Is the chief in attendance?
Yeah, Chief's here.
Thank you.
Okay, it doesn't look like there's any citizens that want to speak to us tonight. If they do, they couldn't get here, so at any rate, I'm going to move on to tonight's consent agenda, which consists of approval of the regular meeting minutes for April the 28th. Also approval of accounts payable in the amount of $598,490.33. Number 3, approval of a payment in the amount of $42,442.63. The PT Fair Construction for work completed on the 2019 MFT street improvements. Number 4, approval of a payment in the amount of $11,055 to RJN Group for the 2020 sewer clean and televising program. Also, number 5, approval of a payment in the amount of $27,102.50 to RJN Group for the 2020 sewer rehabilitation program. And finally, approval of a payment in the amount of $11,095.20 to John Deere Construction Retail Sales for a skid steer loader attachment. Are there any items on tonight's consent agenda that a trustee would like to remove for further review? Or are there any questions on the consent?
This is
I make a motion to approve it.
This is Tony Luciano. I'd like to amend or change something in the minutes from April 28th.
Go ahead, trustee. Go ahead.
All right. Under order of business on page 2, the second paragraph down, the sentence begins with a lengthy discussion followed with a lot of different scenarios and options regarding the resolution. I would like to see everything after that deleted.
Any questions from anybody?
I'm still trying to find it.
Okay.
Would you like me to read it?
Motion was made.
Yeah, would you read it? And why do we need to delete it? It's what we talked about.
Yeah, well, it doesn't necessarily. It says a lengthy discussion followed with a lot of different scenarios and options regarding the resolution. Mayor Chapman noted that the village is not using taxpayers' money to provide relief. The village is just waiving a fee. There's a lot more discussion related to that. And I think if you're going to put that in, we need to put the rest of it in, or we need to delete the whole thing and just leave it as a lengthy discussion.
Trustee Luciano,
Yes.
I did the minutes the day after the meeting, and then I emailed them to Deputy Clerk Tony Dolney, and she approved the minutes as they stand. She and I discussed it, and we didn't think we should put all the conversation in there.
I agree with you 100%. And why did we put any conversation in there? Other than what it was a lengthy discussion.
Yeah, I don't mind.
The discussion was a lot more entailed than just the mayor's comments. There was discussion of the comments that I thought it was taxpayers' money, in addition to quite a few other comments that I made about relief. So I'm thinking that if you're going to put that in, then we should put a statement, some of the statements that I had made regarding that. Or we should just leave it as a lengthy discussion. The next sentence doesn't summarize the discussion.
Yeah, does any trustee have a problem with deleting the rest of that? Because I certainly don't. I don't need my statement in there. Okay?
I don't have an issue with this. It's just a summary of what happened that night.
Yeah, right.
It's not verbatim.
How could that be a summary of what happened when there's only one comment? And we discussed it for over 20 minutes.
That's fine. We already agreed
Please
that we
explain
can
that to me.
delete
How
it.
that
We don't need it.
summarizes what we talked about.
Okay, that's fine. We already agreed we can limit that. So.
Thank you very
I'll
much.
make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second, I devolved.
Wait a minute, time out. Diane, roll call, please.
Anderson,
Yes.
Brockman,
Yes.
Luciano,
Yes.
Warren,
Yes.
DeBold,
Yes.
and Kirkland. Yes.
The consent agenda stands as amended, or stands the way it is with minutes amended. Minutes supposed to be a reasonable fact summary of what goes on at a meeting. If we get into this any further, I'd like to recommend to the board that we hire a court stenographer. I don't think the clerk is got that type of a machine. And if we're going to have the minutes vote word for word from now on, I think we ought to pay for a stenographer. So why don't everybody be thinking about that? Hey?
You know, excuse me, Mayor, this is Tony Luciano again. And I just...
Yeah, I know who you are.
There's no need to go to that extent. I'm not expecting a verbatim transcript. I'm expecting either we summarize what as best we can of what happened, and not just one comment by one person and no one else.
Yeah, that's fine, and we scratched it, right? But we'll
right. No, there's no
we'll
need
be
to
talking about this stenographer anyway, you know? Huh? What'd you say?
I said there's no need for stenographers. You record the meetings anyway. If we had to look into it, we could see.
Yeah, well, like I said, it's a reasonable facsimile, and it's the judgment of the clerk, who's an elected official just like you are, that's the judgment. She works for nobody here, okay? All right?
And certainly, if any board member disagrees, we have the opportunity to speak up of what we think. And that's all I did.
Yeah. Oh, good. Let's move on to reports and communications. Okay?
Mayor Chapman, I didn't get the second on that.
DeBold second the approval of the minutes of the consent agenda.
And Dan
I'm
Anderson
sorry,
made the motion.
Correct, Diane. Dan Anderson made the motion as amended. DeBold seconded.
Thank you.
Okay. Then you need to call a roll call, right? Or did we do that?
We did that.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to reports and communications. I have no proclamations. Diane, are there any communications to the village?
No, there's not.
Okay. I'll take a time under my reports here all week. I've been working with staff members plus other mayors in the area, plus the Will County Government League. We're trying to get our act together on the different approaches that different mayors are taking around the state. And Will County, we wanted to at least try to stay somewhat unified. That's always been the strength of the Will County Government League, the COG. But some people are starting to go off in different directions when it comes to the way the reopen plan that was announced by the governor. My thought is that the plan has some merit. It also has a lot of flaws in it. One of them that I've been working very, very diligently on, in fact, all day today and all day yesterday, was a letter put together to ask the governor to look into the possibility of separating us from the Chicago area and Cook County. And believe me, the reason is not for what the other mayors are saying, because Chicago holds us back. I'm in a different mindset. I believe each area, the densely populated Chicago area and the more sparsely populated Will County area, holds each other back. And what I mean by that is if they add the numbers together in order to give us phase 3, the plan to move to phase 3 and begin to open the non-essential businesses, if they put all our numbers together, Chicago gets a premature open when they're probably still a hot spot. And Will County would get a later opening than they should have got. So it puts us in a position to where Chicago could prematurely open and then get a setback, get a flare up, and actually get put back into phase 2. But on the same thing, a lot of our people would start to commute into Chicago, bring back that virus again, and put us back into phase 2. So that's the approach that right now there's 6 mayors out of the group that I've been talking to today that are in agreement with that, and we're going to see about a letter to that effect with all of our signatures on the letter downstate. Okay? So that's pretty much my report. If there's any comments, I'd gladly take them.
Hey, Mayor, this is Anderson.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Clifton.
I just wondered if you're able to give us the names of the other mayors that you're working with, or maybe you don't want to share that. Just curious.
No, not right now, because I'll give you March, who's not the mayor of Peatone anymore because the mayor resigned. The guy who's filling in from Peatone is March. Pfizer, or I think that's the way you pronounce it, from Mokina, is on board, and Frankfurt's on board. right at this time, and I just hung up with Brennan from Manuka, and I need to talk to him again tomorrow morning. But Will County governmentally is working on trying to get them all on board. Okay.
Do you see anything happening anytime sooner than what the governor is, allowing?
No, according to the what's required in the phases. Okay, what's required to move to phase 3? And Chief, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that I think we're almost there when it comes to Will County. But by adding our numbers in with Cook County and with Chicago, we're not. So it's basically, I don't think anything's going to happen until the 29th. And now the governor's in lockdown himself, which is not going to help the situation with him in isolation. So I would guess that we're probably on that schedule, May the 29th, for anything significantly to happen. All these letters that are going into the governor now, they have about 1 million different ideas going down there on how to get this done. And, if everybody just goes off on their own direction, nothing's going to really work. It's just going to be a madhouse. Nobody will know what the hell's going on. And so it's an attempt to try to get people together. And what you got is you have everybody with their own ideas. So it's a task that I have that difference of opinion with people when I'm talking about it's bad. Putting us together is bad for us, and it's bad for Chicago. Not just bad for us. And that's the approach I'd like to take. And I think the governor should be a reasonable individual to look at it in that light. But when mayors are attacking the governor and insulting him and telling him that he needs to change and he's got to let us go, I don't think that's helping the situation. I think it's making it worse. So,
Well, no unified approach is the best way, I think.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. We're going to move on to the order of business tonight. Hey. Oh, I have proclamations. Okay. So the order of business. Consideration for approval of an ordinance granting a conditional use for an internet auto sales facility at 207 Earl Road, Unit C in the village of Shorewood, Will County, Illinois. It's also called Zero Auto Warehouse. This is up for a first read. Trustee Brockman and Trustee.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. Mr. Beard, representing Zero Auto Warehouse, came before us at our Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on May 1st for this conditional use. The approval would allow the retail sales of vehicles, and I have 201 Earl, not 207. I think that's right, isn't it, Kelly? 201, Unit C?
It is actually 207 Earl Road.
Oh, it is? Okay, my paper says 201.
Oh.
So anyway, the request does not include any alterations to the interior or exterior of the building. And we held a public hearing. There was no one that spoke for or against the project. And it comes here with an 8-0 vote from the commissioners. And Kelly, if you want to go over some of the restrictions and conditions associated, please do that.
Absolutely, and I apologize. It does appear that there is a typo on the cover memo. but it is 207 Earl Road, and it is reflected that way in the proposed ordinance. But the tenant is looking to occupy the far western tenant space within 207 Earl Road. It will house 5 offices, a lobby, reception area, and a showroom for about 15 passenger vehicles. The hours are proposed to be Monday through Saturday, 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. He envisions having a maximum of 4 employees. There will be no auto repair or car washing on site, and has described the operations to be where he purchases passenger vehicles only. He purchases those from auction, and sometimes will turn around and sell them right at auction, or we'll bring them back to sell online. There was some question at the PZC as to whether or not people come and do test drives and how much activity would be on the site. And the owner has indicated minimal activity, and a lot of times people will buy a vehicle online and not even do a test drive. However, there will be extra overflow parking for, I believe, up to about 30 vehicles on the site, including interior and exterior. There will, however, be no outdoor storage, and as Trustee Brock indicated, PZC did recommend approval with the conditions that were listed in the staff memo, and those are also the ordinance. Attorney Silverman has made a suggestion to attach the approved parking as part of the ordinance, and so we can do that if we're to. Otherwise, we would recommend approval first read and waiving the second read. Mr. Beard is on the call if there are any questions relative to the request.
Not hearing any. I'll entertain a motion to approve the ordinance granting it conditional use.
Anderson, so moved.
Warren, second.
DeBolt, second.
Okay, Diane, roll call, please.
Anderson,
Yes.
Warren,
Yes.
DeBold,
Yes.
Kirkland,
Yes.
Brockman,
Yes.
Luciano.
Yes.
Okay, the ordinance has been, and waive the second read, right? That was put in.
Yes, I'll add that to my motion, waive the second reading.
Okay. All right, so the ordinance is granted. If you're on the line with us, welcome to Shorewood. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Moving on to business item number 2, consideration for approval of the reappointments to the Planning and Zoning Commission for 2-year terms. Sherry Sussner, Jim Relier, Brad Brooks, and Debbie Olson. I'd like to put those people up for a 2-year appointment. Any comments?
If I could, Mayor, I wanted just to point out to the board that Sherry's been on there for 6 years. Debbie, or I should say Brad, has been on there 6 years. Debbie Olson's been on there 17 years. And Jim has been on there 21 years. So a lot of experience. And I want to thank all of them for their service. I don't know if Vice Chair Warren, if you have anything you want to comment on.
No, I concur. I agree totally.
Okay, well, if nobody else has any questions, I'll make a motion to approve Sherry Sussner, Jim Relier, Brad Brooks, and Debbie Olson for a 2-year term on planning and zoning.
Warren will second.
Okay. Diane, roll call, please.
Warren,
Yes.
Brockman,
Yes.
DeBold,
Yes.
Luciano,
Yes.
Kirkland,
Yes.
and Anderson.
Yes.
Okay, the appointments stand.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank them. Yeah. And take back our thanks, too, to that group for the years that they put in. Okay?
Will do.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on to business item number 3. Consideration for approval of a resolution authorizing the execution of an addendum to a contract for improvements to Black Road and Shorewood Drive intersection. Mr. Colada.
Thank you, Mayor. You may recall at the last meeting we discussed options available to the village to postpone this intersection improvement project with PT Faro. PT Faro was very flexible and willing to accommodate the village in any way. So what you have before you is an agreement which would extend the time in which PT Faro has to complete this project. So it's going to allow this to basically start in early 2021. The substantial completion date per this addendum to the contract will be June 1 of 2021, with final completion by June 25th. There's some other provisions in here related to the mast arm. That's a significant lead item. So what this would do, it would allow us to coordinate with PT Faro to allow that part of the project to proceed, meaning it would allow the order to be placed and for that piece of material to be manufactured. Significant lead time of at least 5 months, likely. So what this agreement would do is it would put us on the path to postpone this project to the spring of 2021, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Hey, Jim Anderson here. I got a question. We're concerned about the school being open while the work is going on. Is that going to give them enough time? Because school's going to probably let out by the end of May, and then you got about a month there to get the work done. But isn't there a significant amount of work going to be done while they're in school?
There will be significant work going on during the school year. I should note that the utilities are being relocated currently, and that probably will go on for another month or so. So that won't be any of the work in that area, and that will significantly help. But, you know, we are anticipating the need for a closure of that intersection for probably about 10 days.
That's going to be after the school year, though, right?
We're going to try to work that, schedule that as best as possible, perhaps in conjunction with if there's a spring break or something like that. But it is very possible that we will have to close that during the school year. You know, the anticipation is that this project will be completed, that type of work, the work that would require closing of the intersection, would be by June 1st. So in order for us to save significant dollars potentially, or to not realize additional labor costs, we need to proceed with this project during the school year.
Okay.
So we would work to minimize that as best that we can.
All right. All right. Well, I don't have any further questions then.
Okay.
Do you need a motion to approve this, Mayor? I'll make a motion to approve the resolution if so.
1 second.
Okay, Diane, roll call, please.
Kirkwood,
Yes.
Brockman,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
DeBold,
Yes.
Warren,
Yes.
Luciano.
Yes.
Okay, the resolution to move the repairs to Black Road and Shorewood Drive intersection has been moved into the spring of 21. Moving on to business item number 4. Consideration for the approval of the annual appropriations ordinance for the village of Shorewood, Will County, Illinois, for fiscal year beginning April 1st, 2020 and ending March 31st, 2021. This is up for a first read, and Ms. Merkel.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. This is really a housekeeping item, but it does represent the village's formal spending authority. Right here is the first read of the appropriations ordinance for our fiscal year that began April 1st. We do need to have a public hearing, so we will need to take advantage of that second read, which we'll do when we're all back together at the Village Hall, hopefully in June. The appropriation amount is set at 25% above the budget amount to account for anything, that we couldn't predict at this time. However, we still use the budget as our spending guide. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay. Any questions for Ann? If not, we're going to move on. Thank you. Thank you for that, Ann.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll move on to business item number 5. Consideration for approval of a resolution repealing Resolution number 20R-981 and Resolution number 20R-982 and providing certain relief from water, sewer, and refuse charges. Trustee Luciano.
Excuse me, Mayor. Before we move on, do we need a motion and a second for number 4?
No, that was the first read.
Okay, so we're just going to table it till the second read.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
No problem. Trustee Luciano, go ahead with your resolution here.
Thank you, Mayor. I know the board's objective is to provide relief to any resident whose income has been affected because of the epidemic, and I'm in total agreement with that. However, my concern from the very beginning when we looked at this resolution was that residents whose income had not been reduced because of layoffs, furloughs, or reduction in their hours were affected, were being not affected. I have contended from the first discussion of this resolution that being on unemployment does not necessarily mean you have a reduction in income. The fact is many receiving unemployment are receiving more income than they previously earned, equivalent or slightly less than their regular income. As an example, individual earning a gross income of $800 a week will receive unemployment benefits of $875 a week. This is because the federal government has stepped in and provides a weekly stipend of $600 on top of the regular unemployment benefit. This is the reason I believe when we use unemployment benefits as a criteria for receiving relief, in the original resolution, they will be given relief to those whose income has not been reduced. I believe only the people who demonstrate they had a reduction of income should receive relief. I propose in this resolution to do two things: to verify the resident's income and to make sure less people or residents fall through the cracks who should not receive relief because their incomes were not substantially affected. Now, if you look at the resolution, I know Jim provided it to everyone on Thursday. What it does is it repeals the first two resolutions, it verifies the individual's income, and it simplifies the entire process. The main concern I had with this is that we would give relief to people who need it, not anyone who has not been affected financially by the epidemic. And if there's any questions that anyone has on this, I'd be happy to answer them. I've talked about it for the last two times we discussed it, the reasons why I was concerned. So with that, I'll leave it open to anyone who has questions.
How does it simplify the process?
Well, it simplifies the process because you only do three things. You find out what the person's income is, You find out if their income is more than what they're receiving, and then you find out they verify that what they attested to is that the statement is true. That's all you simply have to do. It's basically the second supplement, just adding a verification for income. And all would have to be done is the resident would simply write a letter to the village manager or administrator stating what his income was before the epidemic, what he's receiving from all sources now, including unemployment benefits, adding in there if his hospitalization has been withdrawn by his employer and he has to pay it himself, and just attesting that all the statements above are true. And that simplifies the whole thing. And my main concern is that it kind of makes us verify that people aren't getting monies that don't need it, just like it would be if we told everyone we're just going to give everyone money, right? We're giving it to people who need it. And secondly, I know people are going to fall through the cracks no matter what we do, but the point is at least we did something, put it in place to show that we're trying to prevent a lot of people from falling through the cracks. And that's simply it.
I'm going to be honest. Tony, the resolution that you drafted and the way you just explained it, it does seem complicated. Not to mention, we've already got 100 people that are between the two processes that are already being dealt with. And then you have another factor as to how do you address the 100 individuals that have already been granted. On the same token, hang on a second, my turn. We're already 6 weeks into this. We're 2 weeks away from the way the governor's Reopen Illinois plan exists, and to start to see potentially some other type of relief coming. At this point, there's 2 programs that have already been established with some sort of relief. At this point, I think we're best to just leave these as they are. I understand the intent, but I do feel the way, even as you explained it, versus you have another condition in the back of this that says anybody that makes over $60,000 is not eligible. It's just 25%. I think you got too many different stipulations, and I think you're putting a bigger paper trail in place. I just want to be honest. I just want to express some concerns. I agree, but I think we've already got 2 things in place. We may not have had the 100% thought every nook and cranny out, but there is something in place that we can address the residents that need it. And from what correct me if I'm wrong, anybody on the line, I believe thus far we're only at 100 individuals that have come in to apply. So at this point, I don't see a benefit in changing the rules as to how we're going to grant this.
I agree. It's, I mean, like you said, we're 6 weeks in this. Most people are already getting their second bill will be coming out any time. If we do anything, maybe we put a date on when we end it. So May 29th is the last day that you can apply for it, or something like that. But this, to me, like you said, I think it just got so much more complicated.
Well, let me just put it to you this way. My main concern was that we did not give relief to people who were getting more money or the same amount of money that they were getting when they were working. And the biggest problem about it, and I have to admit it is the big problem, is one of the things that puts a kibosh on it is the fact that we've already issued all these people relief. And as someone said before, it's awful hard to ask for it back. Unfortunately, this probably should have been addressed in the beginning, and we chose not to do that. For that reason, I think it becomes complicated. So,
but on the same note, maybe a lot of these people may not even have a job come June anyway, or July.
Let me finish, and I'll let you.
I'm sorry, am I talking over someone?
Simply state that I didn't think it was proper for the board to give relief to people who didn't need it. And based on where we're at right now, I can understand where you're coming from, and I know it's near the end of this, and it probably isn't going to be worthwhile even past this now as we talk about it. So at this point, I would withdraw it from being on the agenda right now. Because the biggest problem is how to address people who've already been given the money.
I don't think you can withdraw it, okay? You can make a motion.
Let me make a motion to approve. Let me make a motion to approve a resolution repealing Resolution 20R-981 and Resolution 20R-982, and providing certain relief from water, sewer, and refuge charges.
What?
So if there's no second, the motion will die.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
60 seconds, okay, for a second. To give everybody some time to think about it. I'm timing. Okay, the motion died for a second. Moving on to number 6.
Hey, I have a question before we move on, Mayor, if you don't mind. Did Attorney Silverman have to kick in to write this ordinance?
Is this Trustee DeBold?
No, Anderson.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dan. Yeah, Jim Collada and I worked on it with Trustee Luciano.
Right. I mean, how much did that cost the village?
I don't have the records in front of me. We probably spent an hour and a half or 2 hours or something on it.
Yeah. What's your hourly rate?
I think it's $195.
Yeah. Okay. And then our staff time. All right. Thanks.
Yeah. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I think I'm giving you a pretty good guess. So.
Yeah. Well, more than it could be.
I'd like to add a comment to that. I did bring this up at the prior meeting, and to add it as an amendment to the supplement, and I had to withdraw it because there was a confusion on what we could do it. We had a motion on the floor for a supplement approval for the original resolution. It could have been put into that supplement at that time. So whatever delay or cost it was to the village for bringing it back later, I wanted it put back on the agenda because I didn't have the opportunity to have it put on the supplement. I just want to clarify that.
Well, you had enough time to discuss it. 2 weeks ago we discussed it. I don't think it had legs back then.
2 weeks ago, it said we were advised that it was a gray area and it couldn't be discussed. It was two different things. But it's possible that it was a gray area and it could have been. So, I mean, let's not say that I cost the village money because I was trying to do something that I brought up at the previous meeting.
As long as we don't get six ordinances coming in to everybody's own individual opinion at meetings, okay? Because the meetings will get real long, and they're going to be pretty expensive. Okay? So if everybody just kind of brings one in that didn't have much consensus, things could get pretty bad around here. And I think that's just common sense. If 6 people or 7, I could bring one. Mr. Galata could bring 3. Each trustee bring 2. And by that time, Dave owns an island out in the Bahamas, you know. But other than that, let's move on.
Well, before we
Right.
move on, now I have a comment I would like to add in. So,
Of course.
it's that silent, but I just feel like if we had tabled this at the first meeting when it was brought up, and no one was being shut off, and no one was going to be hurt by us waiting and getting this ironed out so that everybody was clear on what the intent was and how it was going to work, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about it again tonight. That's my comment.
You're absolutely right. Okay. Now we're going to move on to number 6. Consideration for approval of the purchase of an upgrade to our SCADA system from Metropolitan Pump Company. Mr. Pilata.
Thank you, Mayor. The SCADA system is one of the most important components of our water distribution and sewer collection systems. The capital improvement fund for this fiscal year included $80,000 for upgrades to the system. We did have a significant failure to the radio component of the SCADA system at our River Road lift station about 2 weeks ago, and the equipment, the radio equipment, is antiquated. It is no longer available for purchase. So we had to make an immediate move to upgrade that with cellular technology there. So what's before you tonight, though, is an option to add 3 other facilities that have been identified by the utility supervisor, Bill Cerny, and those facilities are the lift stations at Sile and the Fields subdivision, as well as the well number 8 treatment facility. So this would be a total cost of approximately $17,433. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those. And also, I know Mr. Cerny's on the line, and he'd be happy to assist as well.
Yeah, Jim, this is Dan Warren. The $17,000, but we already had this budgeted for, correct, for more than that, correct?
What was anticipated in the budget was $80,000, but it was for a more advanced upgrade. We're not doing everything that we had anticipated doing with that upgrade. We're doing what we think is, the most important part right now, which is the communication system that makes us aware of when there's a problem with one of these facilities.
Correct. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, this is Anderson. Hey, Bill, could you just give the board a quick background on the existing system and maybe its age?
Yeah, Dan, thank you. Our existing system, basically, about 75% of the system is 17 years old. Those radios are 17 years old. Since we put in, the south part of town and the newer facilities, those are about probably 12, 13 years old. But it definitely needs an upgrade because, like Mr. Collada said, we cannot get these radios anymore. So if we lose communications with these facilities, we really have no way to fix it. Going with the cellular system, previous director Dre and myself had looked into doing this for quite a while now because it's a much more reliable source for communications, a lot less failures. So yeah, it like Mr. Collada said, the communication is the key to this system because without a communication to a site, you don't know for well fails, pump fails at lift stations. It doesn't call us up to let us know. And that could be a serious issue with the sewer system, especially during storms. So the system itself, it definitely needs to be upgraded. And I think this is the most reliable way to go. So that's why we've been looking into this for quite a while now.
Okay. And this system or this equipment is going to be compatible with any upgrades that we do in the next, 12 months.
Correct. the upgrades that we're putting in now, what it's going to eventually do, what we're looking to do in the end is once all facilities are upgraded to cellular, then we eliminate the backup at the Village Hall and the main at the Public Works Garage, and everything goes into the cloud system. So we don't do updates or anything. That's all taken care of by Metropolitan. So it's moving forward. It's the way everybody's going right now.
Okay, thanks, Joe.
You're welcome, Dan.
There's no other questions about the upgrade for the state. I'll make a motion to approve it. The purchase of the 3 upgrades at 17,433.
Second.
Okay, Diane, roll call, please.
Anderson,
Yes.
Brockman,
Yes.
Kirkland,
Yes.
DeBold,
Yes.
Warren,
Yes.
and Luciano.
Yes.
Okay, the approval of purchase of an upgrade to our SCADA system has been approved. Thank you, Bill, for that information.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Board of Trustees.
Okay, moving on. Number 7, consideration for approval of a purchase of 2 2021 Ford Explorers and a 2020 Ford F-350 Super Truck from Ron Terrapelli Ford. Mr. Kula.
Thank you, Mayor. In the budget, we had anticipated spending approximately $497,000 for various equipment and vehicles in this fiscal year. What we're bringing forward to you for consideration tonight is just 3 vehicles, the total of which is $125,582.44. So that's approximately 25% of the total amount that's been budgeted for this fiscal year. So as you mentioned, there's the 3 vehicles include 2 SUVs for the police department, and then one one-ton pickup truck would be used in our public works department by our parks crew. So one of the things that's kind of bringing this to the forefront at this time is the fact that due to COVID-19, Ford has had a slowdown and a closure of some of their production. And as a result, we're seeing some significant lead times once we place an order for these vehicles. So, for example, the 2 SUVs, we're anticipating from Ford is anticipating 25 to 28 weeks to build these vehicles after an order is placed. And the longer that we wait or anyone else waits to place their order, it could go out 30 weeks, 35 weeks, who knows. So the thought is that it's important for us to get in line so that we can acquire these vehicles. The 1 ton has a significantly less of a lead time. They're anticipating about 8 to 10 weeks right now. But staff is comfortable making this recommendation because this funding is already in place. The cash is in hand. We've been putting money aside for years in anticipation of replacing the vehicles. So unlike the MFT program where we had to cut 2 streets recently from that, we're not waiting for those dollars to come from the state like the MFT. We already have the cash on hand to make all these purchases. So at this time, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those. Also, Mr. McGowan is on the line, and he can answer any specific questions about the vehicles and the pricing, as he's been the primary point of contact with Tirapelli Ford as well as Ford Corporate.
I don't have any. I do. DeBold. My question is, do we really need to purchase any vehicles at this point, considering what's going on? I know there's going to be. I know you're claiming that they're not claiming, but you're stating that money's been put to the side. I'm respectful that we've done such. Even if an order for a couple of squad cars is going to be put out a few more weeks, so be it. My concern is you're only looking at a couple of 6-year-old vehicles. I think we'd be better suited to be more fiscally responsible for ourselves to sit tight until we have to start seeing how funding is coming back in from the state. Unless somebody can tell me that the 2 vehicles that are dire, unless for some reason these are dire, unsafe vehicles, I still find it hard to justify.
I was going to make a comment on this. I've been down the road with trying to refurbish squad cars that have got some age on them, and it becomes more costly to do that when they get older. And I totally agree that we need to keep rolling in and out 2 cars out of the police fleet every year, just so the old ones go and the new ones come in, and there's just less wear and tear and there's less maintenance.
We're talking about 2 Tauruses. They're not even the patrol units right now. I don't see what's the harm at sitting tight 2-3 months until we can see where funding and everything stabilizes. Just make sure we don't need funding anywhere else or any other such unforeseen circumstances that may arise.
Well, this is the police fleet, and the other comment I had on this is going forward, if you look at the list that's major equipment to be purchased this year, I still think we need to keep the 2-ton snowplow truck in the equipment list for purchase this year, pending to see how things go later on, maybe in late summer, early fall. And the mini excavator and the other 3/4-ton truck for Julie, that could probably be removed or put off till the following budget. But I think the 2 that's on the docket tonight and the snowplow truck needs to be maintained once again to keep our fleet up to date and moving forward instead of trying to fix old equipment.
I understand that, and I'm respectful of that, but we're 12 days into a new budget. So what's the harm if we sit tight on this for 30 or 60 days, 90 days?
Well, I think it's got to do with the manufacturer.
Well, we're talking 25, 28 weeks. If it's a purchase, it's a purchase, and I just don't see the harm in sitting tight on this right now.
Yeah, we're talking 6.
I'm just going to express my concern.
Yeah, I hear you. It's like, but it's 6 months out, and then the pricing could change for the purchase. The state pricing could change at the same time and go up.
And I completely agree with that. I just think we need to be doing our due diligence. Everybody wants to preach fiscal responsibility. I simply think sitting tight for 2 or 3 months until things stabilize, see where everything's at, make sure there's not any other unforeseen circumstances that come up. Heaven forbid the order that's in place to restore Illinois, for some reason there becomes an extension on this, and we have another unforeseen circumstance of cost. I would rather know that we're better safe than sound versus saying, well, maybe we shouldn't have bought it. I personally don't see the harm in sitting tight, whether it's a month or 2, just to start to see where funding comes back in. By all means, I'm one person. I just wanted to share my thoughts on my concerns on it. That's all.
Okay. Is it possible, Trustee Luciano, is it possible to just do half this order and get the 2 police cars now and wait on the snowplow?
Yes, we can order 2. It's entirely up to the board.
Well, these are budgeted items. I understand, but we do have a capital equipment program sitting there. We do have 90 days plus of operating expenses. I don't think $125,000 is going to affect this village either way.
I don't either, but I do think it would be due diligence for the village of Shorewood to sit tight versus running out throwing another $125,000 at some vehicles right now. I don't see the harm of sitting tight. Again, we're 12 days into a budget. I understand it's budgeted for. I understand it's in the major equipment replacement fund. I just think it would be respectable and doing the right thing for the village on a financial aspect to be waiting. Again, I don't see the harm in waiting 30 or 60 days before we make a purchase. And again, that's just, well, I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay. I think we should now have the field. I'll entertain a motion to purchase two 2021 Ford Explorers and a 2020 Ford F-350 Super Duty truck from Ron Farfelli. I'll
make that motion, Mayor.
Is that Anderson?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Warren will second. I was on mute, sorry.
Okay, everybody off mute. Roll call, Diane.
Luciano?
Yes.
Kirkland?
No.
DeBold?
No.
Warren?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
And Brockman?
Yes.
Okay. The motion carries. Make the purchase, please. Move down. Are you still there? Did McGowan leave us?
I'm here with you, Mayor. I'm here.
Okay, so you got the okay to make the cut those contracts, okay?
We appreciate it, Mayor, and so does the local businesses. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to number 8. Consideration for approval of a resolution instituting a moratorium on the enforcement of certain provisions of the Village of Shorewood temporary sign regulations. Kelly?
Thank you, Mayor.
Bring us up to date.
Yes, absolutely. We've been having this discussion about the businesses that have really been hit the hardest, and those are typically the businesses that are deemed non-essential per the governor's order, where they've been forced to close, or even the essential businesses that have had severely restricted operations. And so we've looked at one way that we can offer some relief is to be able to impose a moratorium on enforcement of some temporary sign regulations, and to also help gain exposure for these businesses once they're able to reopen. So I've laid out in the memo the terms in which we are looking to provide relief for temporary signage. And so the eligible entities would be those small businesses classified as non-essential, small independently owned restaurants, and then retailers occupying spaces of up to 7,500 square feet in size. They would have to put the temporary sign still on the subject property as long as there's street frontage. However, for the properties that are located, say, within a shopping center where they don't have street frontage, they would be able to place signs off-premise, but only on immediately adjacent properties. So if there is an outlot, for example, then that business owner can approach the outlot owner and request permission to place, say, a yard sign or a banner on their property. And so they also have to make sure that signs are not located within the right-of-way or within what we call the vision triangle, which is at an intersection which would block views. So we want to make sure that the location is in safe locations for people to traverse the streets as well as sidewalks. In terms of number and size of signs, we're allowing one temporary sign per street frontage up to 32 square feet in size, which is what the code allows. But we're allowing that as part of this relief. And then they can have a banner, feather flag, portable sign, or a yard sign. Any other type of temporary signage would require a permit and other compliance with the other zoning regulations. And so we're proposing that these temporary signs be allowed to be displayed through Labor Day. This date, we wanted to make sure that we picked a date. However, we're always able to evaluate the circumstances, and if we need to, we can always extend that. And the final thing that we wanted to do is eliminate the permit requirement and permit fees for these businesses. So again, the goal here is making sure that those businesses that are the hardest hit have more opportunity to gain exposure within the community and be able to hopefully allow them to continue operating. I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Yeah, just a minute, Kelly. We got somebody with they're not muted, and there's a lot of noise in the background. So if you have something going on, it doesn't have to be a lot. Please mute unless you got something to say. Thank you. Go ahead.
Have you had a lot of people, businesses inquiring about the signage?
Not yet. Most of the businesses that are inquiring are the ones that are struggling. So they're more concerned about when they're able to open and how they're able to prepare for reopening. But this is where we wanted to make sure that we're planning ahead and we have something in place for when the time comes that they are able to open. Because the other thing that this would allow is that if they had specials, then they could kind of swap out their signs, or if it was a reader board sign, they could put their specials or their sales up there, or even just, keeping people apprised as to what's happening with their business. So it allows them more flexibility in that regard. But some of the businesses would be able to take advantage of it now, such as those restaurants, for example, who are open but are still struggling because they're independently owned and maybe don't have as large of a marketing budget. And so this would be able to help them now.
Okay, good. All right, sounds good. It's a start. Looks good.
Kelly, I have a couple.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so if I'm understanding this correctly, then people won't have to come to us for any approval. They can just get started with putting up some new signs. Number one, that's my first question. Is that correct? Assuming this gets approved.
That is correct. And so what I will do is when I send the information out, if this is approved, then I will offer to provide assistance to help guide these businesses so that they put up something that does meet these criteria.
Okay, and then that maybe answers my second question. So my second question was going to be, you're going to let all of these small businesses know that this option is out there and the opportunity is there for them to do this. You're not going to wait until they just decide to do it, right? We're going to let them know in advance.
Absolutely. I have an email ready to go. If this is approved, I can get this out immediately so that they can start planning ahead and figure out how they want to communicate with the community about their services.
Okay, thanks.
So here's, Kelly, I got a question. How is this visioned, how is this going to be applied to the strip mall aspect? Because most of them don't have frontage, on their own property side. Is this really going to be geared at the intent that they can at least just hang banners from the front of their units?
Absolutely. So they can actually put a temporary sign up on the front or over their window in the front. They can put it on the facade as well. So if they're unable to get approval from the adjacent property owner to put it, say, on Brook Forest, for example, then they still have the ability to put up a sign that's up to 32 square feet, like a banner, for example, on their tenant space.
So it's just basically a lot of these strip mall aspects, it's just going to apply that they can put a banner up is what it's going to allow.
It could be possible that is the limitation. It depends on the adjacent property owners. Yes.
Okay.
I had a question, Kelly, about what you're saying this can only be put on their property or adjacent. We're not going to allow them to be putting them on the corners like on 59 and 52 or River, and they have to display their, advertise their specials or whatever.
That's correct.
How houses do for sale or to see their homes.
Right. So generally, we actually don't allow signs to be placed in the right-of-way anyhow. So signs that are placed within the right-of-way are not permitted. Now, I do know that there are some open houses and some other signs that we tend to see occasionally in the right-of-way. And a lot of times we will call them and ask them to pull them. And if not, then we have the ability to just pull those from the right-of-way because in many cases it could be a safety hazard. And so that's why signs are not allowed in the right-of-way.
One more question. I know this is because of the pandemic, and I know you had to put a date on this, but this is only going to last as long as the pandemic lasts until these places can get open. Is that right? Or is it just going to
got a date in there, Tony.
I mean,
there's a date in there, Tony. So it's got a termination date of September 7th currently.
I understand, but if it ends sooner than that, is this going to terminate, or is we giving them to that date to get the advertisement?
So, Trustee Luciano, the idea here was to try and give them more exposure. No one really knows when the pandemic is going to end. But even when the pandemic ends, I don't think that these retailers and the small business owners are going to just be able to flip the switch and then, be in good shape. And so I think that there is an expectation that there probably will be some additional struggling along the way to try and reestablish and reopen their business and sort of have consumers feel comfortable and get them back to the place where they were prior to the pandemic occurring. So at this point, we put a date certain in there, hoping that it could cover a long enough period of time that would help them. But as I mentioned, we can always reevaluate the date. If it becomes problematic, we don't have to extend it. If it's something where it's working well and the businesses still need some additional exposure, then we can consider extending it further.
Thank you, Kelly.
You're welcome.
I have one question. The message board, we're not allowing those ones with the lights and the arrows. It's flashing big white every couple of seconds with an arrow to it, right?
You are correct. Those are not permitted as part of.
Okay, thank you. That's one of the images I just had in my head. So.
Right. We specifically omitted that in favor of, I would envision that most businesses that take advantage of this would likely use a banner or even yard, perhaps those smaller ones that you can kind of really push into the ground, things that are more easily changed out. But absolutely, those sort of getting large devices, those are not being proposed as being part of this moratorium.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, no more questions for Kelly. I'll entertain a motion to approve a resolution instituting a moratorium on the enforcement of certain provisions of the Village of Shorewood temporary signs.
I'll make that motion. Dan Ward.
And who's the second?
Who's the second?
DeBaldwell.
Okay. Diane, roll call, please.
Warren?
Yes.
DeBold?
Yes.
Luciano?
Yes.
Kirkland?
Yes.
Brockman?
Yes.
And Anderson?
Yes.
Okay. Agenda item number 8 stands approved. We're going to move on to reports. Trustee Anderson, Public Works.
Excuse me, Mayor, I do have one question. I'm trying to numerically number the resolutions, and I'm not sure what happened with number 5. Trustee Luciano read it, but I didn't get the ending of it, or,
It doesn't get a number. It wasn't approved.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, this is Anderson. Public Works is, they've begun, MFP begun this week. Thursday, Friday last week, the Public Works Department was out putting door hangers on the resident streets that were going to be affected by the work this year. There's been some sump line clean outs and some ditch work going on. The guys put some riprap in the creek over by Oxford Lane, in that retention area over there, and just normal maintenance, mowing, and things like that. I know they're working on a short staff and minimum hours, but they are getting things done. And looking forward, I know they're all looking forward to getting back to a full schedule here in the next couple of months. So. That's really all I have right now, guys. So, if there's any other questions, if not, I'm done. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. If there are no questions for Trustee Anderson, Trustee Brockman, Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you again, Mayor. Besides the two agenda items we had on tonight's docket, we also discussed conditional use permit for 301 Almond Dodge truck repair, and we granted the petitioner a 30-day extension, so they'll be coming back at our next meeting, which will be June 3rd. And I do want to comment that this was the first time we used video conferencing, and it worked extremely well, I thought. And I want to give a lot of credit to Kelly and Natalie for all the hard work setting that up. Hopefully that'll be the last time, because our next meeting will be June 3rd, so maybe this thing will be over with. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, that would be nice.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions for Trustee Blackman? If not, Trustee Kirkland, Parks and Recreation.
Thank you. Playground and fitness equipment at all parks within the village of Shorewood remain closed and off limits as ordered by Governor Pritzker. This also includes Shorewood Park and the disc golf course. And lastly, the summer Shorewood connection will be available digitally in the coming weeks. So be on the lookout on the village website and social media pages for that information of the release being out there. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for Trustee Kirkland? If not, Trustee Luciano, Citizens Advisory Committee. You with us? Are you there?
I'm sorry, Mayor. I had it on mute. I'll start over. I just wanted to say that the meeting for May 27th has been canceled due to the governor's mandate, and that many of the citizens, members, have been involved in doing different things in the community to help out, making masks and so forth. Our next meeting hopefully will be in September, and that's all I have.
Okay. Before I ask for adjournment to go into executive session, I forgot. Under my report, I was going to ask a consensus of the board about having an in-the-building meeting, our last meeting in May, and also a COW meeting after that one. We'll get the room set up for social distancing and everybody under masks. So, do I have any problems with that right now? I would take that as an agreement, and Mr. Administrator, between you and Jim Harpen, can we get that set up?
Not a problem, Mayor.
Is it? Oh, for a minute I was thinking I was having trouble with my phone. But at any rate, so did everybody get that? Because I think I'm hoping my phone's not causing a problem here.
I got it, Mayor.
Yeah, I got it.
Oh,
Yeah,
I got
it too.
I got it.
okay. Okay. So, unless something really terrible was to happen between now and then, and we'll go ahead and plan that one out and try to get back together, at least start to move back towards a normal situation, whatever the hell that's going to be. I entertain a motion now to move into executive session for personnel to consider the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees. There will be no action taken at the executive session. Jim, do you think we need to move back into a regular board meeting, or can this go on to the next one?
There's no need to go back into open session after the executive session.
Okay. All right. So I'll entertain that motion to move into executive session, and we'll adjourn from the executive session. Does everybody have the numbers to get to the executive session?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I'll make the motion.
Okay. Yeah. Once we adjourn from this meeting, everybody take a couple of minutes and then start logging into the executive session. We'll try to get it going in 5 minutes. Okay. Diane, roll.
Second.
Luciano.
Anderson. No.
Oh.
Actually, it was Morty. Diane, roll call.
Anderson,
The bulb's still on.
One's still on.
Luciano's
still
still
on.
on.
Yeah, we're asking for a vote to go into executive session right now.
So for your roll
So
call,
it's
the
either-
bulb's yes.
Okay. Diane,
Yes.
continue.
Warren,
Yes.
Luciano,
Yes.
Kirkland,
Yes.
Brockman,
Yes.
and Anderson.
Are you there, Dan? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I lost you.
We are moving into executive session.
All right.
Take a 2 minute break.